So your petition speech has three parts, just like all speeches do. You have your introduction, which will be up to 30 seconds long. You have your body of your speech, which is the longest and the most substantial part of your speech. That will be up to 1 minute and 30 seconds long. And then you have your conclusion, which is also up to 30 seconds. And I'm going to go over what each part of your speech entails. So, in your introduction, especially when you're trying to persuade the audience about a subject, especially when you are informing them about a topic that they may or may not be familiar with, it is important to capture their attention first and foremost. And you will do that using your attention getter. So as we all know, your attention getter will be the first words out of your mouth, and you can use a quote, you can use a startling statement, you can describe a brief story, you can start with a statistic, whatever you choose, make sure that you engage the audience from the jump. So after you capture their attention, the next thing you will do is state your connection. That's when you're going to tell the audience what your cause is. So if your topic is that you think the United States should legalize marijuana everywhere, you will state that in your connection. You would tell the audience what your cause is and why you chose this topic. What is its meaning to you? What is its significance? What is its impact on your life? So you can also use your connection to establish your credibility. So you can state that you have a lot of knowledge about this topic, that you have personal experience with this topic. That way, once you have captured the interest of the audience, you will tell the audience that you are knowledgeable, so they will be more likely to be persuaded by the rest of your presentation. So the third part of your introduction, you have your urgency. That's when you're going to tell the audience, answer the question, why is it important that the audience acts now? So where's the fire at? So if your presentation is about legalizing marijuana, you're going to tell the audience, why is it important that they start a protest about it? Why is it important they petition about it? So you're just going to justify why you chose your speech centered around this particular argument, and why is it so significant that we enact change at this particular moment. So after you do that, the final part of your introduction will be your preview statement. So that's when you're going to give the audience a clear understanding of what you're going to discuss in the body of your speech. So like you do with your outline when you categorize your speech when you categorize your key points into categories. So for example, if you were doing your speech about legalizing marijuana, you would say, I'm going to talk about the impact of legalization, I'm going to talk about the parties that it affects, and then I'm going to talk about the people who oppose my argument. So that's when you're giving your audience a clear understanding of what's to come as you progress throughout your presentation. So the second part of your speech is the body, and like I said before, it is the most substantial part of your presentation. So that's where your key points are going to be, and the first thing that you need to do in the body of your speech is discuss who is involved in your argument. So who's involved in the legalization of marijuana? Who are the people who can enact this change? Also, who is it impacting? So because it's illegal right now in Louisiana, who does that impact? Why should the audience care? Why do you want the audience to act? This is when you're going to establish that there's a problem in place, and then you're going to provide a solution to that problem. So this is where you're just going to justify you centering your entire presentation around this topic, and why should the audience care about your topic. After you do that, you're going to discuss the consequences. So if the audience doesn't start a protest, if the audience doesn't donate, if the audience doesn't boycott, what will happen? So the audience needs to know, okay, well, what if I don't act? Is the world going to end? What's going to happen? So that's when you're going to just tell the audience why it's important. It goes back to your urgency. You're going to communicate why the audience needs to act right now and what happens if we don't. After you do that, you need to address the opposition. So when you have a certain argument and you have the facts to back it up, it's important that you address the people who oppose your argument. So who are those parties? Are they politicians? Are they activists? Whatever. You need to address who threatens your argument and the solution to it. It's important to do this because the audience may be familiar with your argument, so you need to address the opposition and just have evidence to provide that shows that your argument and your solution is better than what the opposition is saying. So you definitely need to address that, and you just address the people who exist who threaten your solution to your problem. So after you do that, make sure that when you're talking about who's involved and the consequences and all that, you will have to attribute your sources. This is where the oral citations come in. So make sure you say according to whatever your source is at least twice in the body of your speech. So after you've captured the audience's attention, after you've established there's a problem in place, after you've told them everything you need to know about your topic, you're going to wrap things up. And the first part of your conclusion will be your summary statement. So that's when you briefly summarize what your key points were, the gist of it. It can just be one sentence or so, where you just remind the audience of what you've already discussed. After you summarize, you will do what's called a call to action. So this is when you're going to state specifically about what you want the audience to do. So you're going to say, I want you after this presentation to go out and start a protest. I want you to sign this petition. I want you to boycott this product. I want you to donate to this fundraiser. You need to tell the audience specifically what your recommendations are to support your argument. So that's going to be in your conclusion. After you do that, you need to make sure that you end on an impactful note so that can utilize the same devices as your attention getter. So you can use a quote, a startling statement, a statistic, some type of powerful statement to make sure that you end on a strong note. So in your introduction, you capture the interest of the audience, you keep them engaged throughout your presentations, you bring in all the facts, the scholarly articles, whatever to back up what you're saying. You have the visual aids to show them physically about whatever your topic is. You use emotional appeal, you use logic, you use reasoning all through the body. Then in your conclusion, you wrap things up, you remind them what have we learned, and then you ask them to do a call to action about whatever action you want them to do, and then you just end on a strong note. That way the audience is persuaded, they're engaged, they understand the urgency of your topic. So when you are structuring your petition speech, when you are delivering your petition speech, there are things that you need to remember because these impact how likely the audience is to be persuaded by your topic. So the first thing is you need to remember there are ethical guidelines that go hand in hand with persuasion. So when you are unethical, that means you are faking quotes from authority figures, you are faking statistics, you're not honest in what you say. So you need to remember that you need to do the opposite of those. You need to make sure that you are being honest and transparent with your logic. You need to make sure that every quote, statistic, every source of reasoning that you use is truthful. You also need to make sure that you center the audience with your thoughts. So some of your topics may be controversial, so it's important that you remember that you have to make sure that you're true to yourself while also balancing being true to the audience. That's why it's important to establish that credibility, establish goodwill in the introduction of your speech. Because while your opinion or whatever your argument is maybe unpopular or controversial, this audience still needs to know that you respect them as well. So make sure that you center the audience and you are considerate of how they may feel about your topic and how you deliver your topic. So regarding your actual delivery, you need to also make sure that you use inclusive language, which means that you don't want to use demeaning language to stereotype somebody based on their race, their sexual orientation, their religion, their disability, or other factors. So you want to make sure that you use inclusive language. So that means if you're talking about a certain job, don't stereotype based on gender. If you're talking, make sure that you use group membership. Make sure you actually see the name of the group so the people in the audience who may be members of that group don't get offended. It's important that you make sure that your language is not offensive. So while you may be trying to persuade the audience to do a certain act, they shouldn't be offended while you're delivering your speech. You want to make sure you base whatever your argument is on facts and logic, and then you also address the opposition while being mindful of how the audience may feel. So that is it for your persuasive speech. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I cannot wait to see what you do.